Oh yeah, another trick on spotting. Okay, here's something I meant to talk about and I forgot. How to tell which units can spot which. Okay, so right now all the units are the same. I don't have any units selected. All the units are the same. All the unit floating icons are the same color, you can see. So if I select a unit, you'll notice that the icons change. All the enemy units' icons moving around. So if you're new to Combat Mission uses something called relative spotting. And what that means is that every unit has to spot on its own. Unlike most games and older Combat Mission titles, which had something called Borg spotting, where once an enemy unit is spotted, your entire force knows where it is. In this, every single unit has to spot on its own. If they're in command with each other, or if they're have communications with each other, they can share spotting info, but they still need to spot it on their own. So you'll notice that this tank can spot things that can spot some things, but not all. You'll notice that this stuff disappears. You notice that some contacts here reappear when the tank is selected, so it has its own idea of what's on the battlefield. You can easily tell what units can see an enemy unit by clicking on the enemy unit's floating icon, and the unit that can see it will be highlighted. You'll see that the floating icon for the tank is highlighted. The tank is the only friendly unit that can spot this enemy machine gun team. Same with this enemy unit here. With this enemy unit, the tank and the infantry here can spot, these guys can't. So that's a great way to tell what can see an enemy unit. And yep, that's why you want to lead with the infantry for the most part, is the tanks. This is an exception because this is pretty open ground here, so it can spot pretty well, but tanks generally do not spot very well, especially if they're buttoned up, and especially to their sides or their rear. It's better to the front because it's where their optics are pointed, but yeah, it's yeah, sometimes you'll enter situations where the tank is just sitting there and it can't see anything. That's the disadvantage of tanks. So at this point in the battle, it's pretty much a mopping up stage. I'm just going to move forward and finish off the enemy. They're pretty much broken. So I'm just going to continue moving forward real quick, and we're going to finish this off and get to the next battle. Ah, shoot, and I had that memory crash that happens when I stream. Darn it. That's okay, I'll jump right back in. I had a save. I'll just cease fire and go to the next battle. So for the new people who haven't watched my stream before, my XSplit does not play, my broadcasting software does not play well with my computer's RAM, and I get a crash every now and then. It has nothing to do with the game, though. Unfortunate. I'm probably just gonna cease fire to the next battle, since the battle's over. It's not a stream until I've had a RAM crash. It's a little ways back. Whatever, doesn't matter. I'm just going to cease fire. Probably lose it because I didn't take the objectives. It's fine. It's just a training mission. Okay, AAR screen. So you get this at the end of every battle. It'll tell you right here in big text what your result was. In this case, we got a minor defeat because I started from a save way back. So objectives are divided into a few different things. You have ground. You have ground objectives like the green text with the green ground with the white floating text above it. That's pretty. We've already seen those. If you mouse over the thing, it'll tell you what you accomplished. So check mark means you got it. Shows you how many points you got for it. Pretty self-explanatory, really. Targets is you can assign units as a target to the enemy force. If they inflict casualties on them, you'll get points for it. And it's partial in this case. You see they destroyed some of my units, so they got 25 points, but they didn't get a lot of them, so it's still the red failure X. And parameters is force-wide stuff, so there's a variety of parameters. Most of the ones that are used is friendly casualties, and that's like a percentage thing. Like, if your force took less than 20% casualties, you get these points. You'll get all of them or none. It's an all-or-nothing thing. So in this case, I met my friendly casualties parameter, which was probably something like less than 15% casualties. So I get the points, 100 points. And then right down here are the point totals, and the game makes a calculation. There's actually, if you want to know the equation for how it calculates the result based on the points, that's in the manual. Point totals are here, and then here you get a breakdown of how many men you had, how many were killed, wounded, missing are guys who surrendered, how many vehicles were lost, that kind of stuff. And then if you click Review Map, you can actually go in and you can view all the units. The Fog of War is turned off. You can see a bunch of stuff. You can see like everything on the map, basically. If you click on a unit, over here you'll see how many units it killed, what sort of damage it did. So these guys caused 4 enemy casualties, this squad. They got none. You know, you can just click for each unit, and it will total them up through the campaign too. So if you have a unit like that goes through the whole campaign, you can get all sorts of stuff. It can rack up pretty impressive totals. So yeah, basically Fog of War is turned off, and you can see the whole map. You can see everything as it happened. Okay, so then hit escape to go back to this and end, and then save. And then we're prompted, and we're going to go into the defense mission. Okay, briefing again. I'm just going to give you the quick version. We've taken Hilt 124. The enemy is attacking. And they've established a command post here, which after we're going to repel the counterattack on Hill 124, then we're going to counterattack and take the command post. For reinforcements, we have infantry, artillery, and tanks arriving. That's basically the idea. Kill German units, hold ground, that's the idea. So this is an example of multiple setup zones here. You can see we've got one red color here and another red color there. So this unit can only set up in this setup zone. It can't set up in this one. And then this unit, because it's outside of any setup zone, has to stay. So this mission, the defense is, yeah, as Capetto says, defenses are kind of boring to play, really. That's why most like versus AI missions are against, or have the human as the attacker. Because there's just, you know, there's more pieces to move and more to do. So okay, so this mission is mostly going to teach us about using indirect fire support, which is like a whole branch of the game that we haven't even gotten into yet. So we're going to do fortifications really quick. There's a few different fortifications. We have bunkers, which are basically like a unit. I can move them around on the map, within the setup zone, of course. You notice I can't move there. They're immobile once you begin the game, obviously. So right now it's empty. If I want to embark a unit onto it, I select a movement order, and then I click on the bunker as a destination, and blah, the unit is now in the bunker. We'll get into the passenger stuff soon enough, but you can see that the guys are now, like, in the bunker. And the bunker has a machine gun built into it, so they'll automatically man the machine gun. Okay, we'll get into passenger stuff when the reinforcements arrive. I have a whole spiel about that. So then we got anti-tank guns. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with anti-tank guns, but just in case there's someone here who has never played a World War II game before, anti-tank guns are basically cannons on a wheeled chassis. They are much more concealable, they're a smaller target, but they have pretty much no mobility. You can move them around a little bit, but not much. And once they're spotted, they're very vulnerable. They're highly useful for the defense, but the trickiest part about using an anti-tank gun is you want to make sure, you want to spend a lot of time thinking about where you place it on the map, because once you place it, it's probably going to stay there. And if it gets spotted, it's probably going to die, because it's going to become a priority target. So this is a pretty good spot for an anti-tank gun. It's a good default setup. There's a road here, which is a pretty likely avenue of enemy vehicle advance. So it's got the road really nicely covered. If the enemy moves across it like this, where you see my cursor moving, he's going to get a nice flank shot on them as they move in. Another important thing with an anti-tank gun is you notice that it's only covering a small part of the front. It's a great temptation to put an anti-tank on like right here. The problem is that it's now exposed to the entire enemy sector, and basically as soon as it's spotted, the whole enemy force is going to shoot at it and kill it. So you actually want to usually do what's called keyholing it. You want to put it in a spot where it only covers a narrow front, and preferably hitting the enemy from the side as he advances. That maximizes the advantages of your AT gun while minimizing its disadvantages. So that way, this way it's protected from all fire here. Nothing's going to be able to shoot at it. It's only going to shoot at stuff that's vulnerable to it. And there's another fortification type which most of you should already be familiar with, foxholes. It's pretty self-explanatory. You know, if a unit is in a foxhole, it doesn't physically have to be sitting in it. There's some abstraction here. As long as it's in the combat, as long as it's in the action spot, as long as it's near the foxholes, it'll get a defense bonus from them. And then, as we already saw before, you have trenches. Trenches, we can actually move these around since it's setup phase. You don't actually need to move them for this mission. There's no need. You don't actually tell a trench which way to point. They just automatically connect to each other. I'm just moving it around. I'm just giving it a move order. You can see that the trenches automatically connect to each other as you place them adjacent. Okay. So, these floating icons for the trenches, by the way, there's a lot of them, but they'll disappear once the battle starts. So, I have got my units pretty much arrayed and like a defense around the hill. I'm just going to leave them where they are. They're pretty much good where they are. So, let's see. You'll notice, if I click on this unit, I've started the battle, and I'm already missing troops down here. That is because this is a troop that carried on from the last mission. In campaigns, if you haven't played a combat mission campaign before, units, if they're core units, there's a thing called core units, and they're used in multiple battles, and it's like many other strategy games with the campaigns. The casualties, their morale, not usually their morale status, but usually their casualties and their ammo is carried over from mission to mission. Depending on the campaign, they may get resupplied, they may get their men reinforced. It's highly variable. Usually the campaign briefing will tell you whether that happens or not. So if you're playing a campaign, you want to try and not lose all of your guys in one mission, because you might start up the next mission and have no one to use. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and let the turn go forward. We'll deal with that fortification over there in a moment. Go ahead and let the battle go forward. So we've already started spotting some enemy units. This floating icon is a German armored car. We'll get a close-up of that soon enough. So we can see some enemy infantry moving out over here. So intel says my attack's going to arrive from about this area, this area, this area. And then there's the enemy defenses of the command post over here. You cannot tell whether a unit is a core unit or not. It is hidden. It is up to the campaign designer whether he's going to tell you that the unit is core. The reason it is like that, and it's up to the campaign designer, is some campaign designers may want to prevent players from exploiting non-core units. Like you may get some units like an extra force in a mission, and it just appears in that mission, and players could abuse it and like just use that unit since they know it's expendable. So it's up to the campaign designer whether he wants to tell you that a unit is core or not. And that information will be contained in the campaign briefing. Okay, so uneventful first turn. We see a bunch of contacts. We know there's a ton of movement in these woods here. We're now going to go over a very important part of the game, and that is fire support. So, to help us with that, we've got a battery of, I think it's a battery or a platoon. A platoon of mortars over here. So you see this floating icon here, these are mortars. So, heavy weapons like mortars usually must be deployed before they can be used. You'll find this in the special command tab. F7 is the hotkey, third one with the S. When you stop moving them, you want to hit deploy weapon. You notice that the button gets depressed. You notice that there's a text here that says not deployed. It's not going to be able to fire until it gets deployed. Most heavy machine guns, Soviet machine guns, are sort of an exception in that you don't need to do the deploy weapon, they'll just do it automatically. Most heavy weapons like machine guns, anything that runs on a tripod really, needs to use a deploy weapon before you can shoot it. So I hit deploy weapon for these. Over the turn, they're going to go ahead and deploy themselves. The setup time depends. For mortars, I think it's around 30 seconds, although it's going to depend on the mortar. For a machine gun, it's usually pretty quick, unless it's in a building. This trips up a lot of people. Machine guns in a building take longer to deploy because it simulates the guys having to find a stable firing platform to get the machine gun up against the window, or it simulates them knocking out a mouse hole to shoot the machine gun through, things like that. So it can take longer, I think up to a minute or more. So, yeah, eventually, as the battle progresses, I'm going to fast forward through it. These guys will eventually... there he goes. And not deployed text is gone, and you'll see the mortar is set up. So now these guys can fire. So we've just got some more movement out there. Nothing really going there. And some machine guns, like German machine guns, can fire from